You want a nicotine addiction? No, it's mango flavored. Oh,
Hey, folks, it is April the 20th, and we do, as we will see here, just right there. So, the Texas Legislature, if you want to find notes for this, I have put a PDF version of this on the Google Classroom and all that good stuff. But please keep in mind, let's see, next week, I don't think we're going to have a lecture on this next week because I have to administer STAR testing Tuesday and Wednesday, and I don't think we'll be able to do it on Thursday or Friday. The following week, I have to do 8th grade STAR test, and I think that's Tuesday and Wednesday for me. So expect class to be hit or miss, right? So they told us to give y'all work to keep you busy. So really, what I want you to do is to finish your papers. I'll probably give you one more assignment, but you'll have like a week and a half to 2 weeks to do it. But just make sure you do it. I want to make sure I have all the grades in, and I want to make sure that everyone has the grade they need to graduate before the middle of next month.
Thank you.
That's my goal. Don't screw it up. All right. So, Texas Legislature. So,
We don't graduate your fault.
no, absolutely not. I'll sleep like a baby that night, but you might not. So, do what? All right. Functions of legislative bodies. Yeah. So we know that like U.S. Congress, they do things like lawmaking. They also redistrict, so they can tell like where are the district areas for where representatives are. The party in power always wants to make sure that district lines help them out. Now, by law, they're supposed to be fair, but the law doesn't say necessarily where they're supposed to go. They also add to the Constitution through the amendment process. Casework, they can call forth committees to investigate things. Education. So remember, it's from the state that education is supposed to be run. It's in the Texas Constitution. It's not in the U.S. Constitution. Oversight. So they can also look and see how Texas bureaucracies, such as like the Department of Family Protective Services, the Health and Human Services Department, so on and so forth, how they're doing. And of course, they can also do investigations. Because, well, that way they can do things like figure out where to make a law. So, structure of this legislature is bicameral. That means there's two houses. There's the House of Representatives for the state with 150 members, and there's the Senate with 31. The Speaker of the House is elected by membership. So the House of Representatives votes for their own leader. However, the lieutenant governor, who's in charge of the Senate, is voted by the people when they vote for a governor. It's a statewide election. Electing legislature is election in November, general election. They take office in January. So this is much like the presidency, remember? Everybody voted in November, in January, took office. Single member districts, 2-year terms for representatives, but 4-year staggered terms for senators. Remember, for the U.S. senators, it was 6 years, but for the state, it's 4 years. Vacancies are filled by special election. So they have a special ballot that goes out, bless you, to the people, and they can go up to their polling place and vote for somebody who's trying to get an empty spot. Biennial regular sessions. That means every 2 years is when they meet to make law. This is one of those periods. That's why right now in the House, the House of Representatives for Texas, there are laws being proposed. Laws for like how police are supposed to conduct themselves, firearms, education funding, COVID relief, all of that stuff. It's all being met right this instant in Austin.
Well, I mean, any law restricting gun laws, infringement in the Second Amendment. So
I think the big one right now is the other direction.
that's it.
Oh, we'll see. And that's actually from the Tyler, that's from Schaefer, the Tyler guy. He's trying to do no permit concealed carry right now, which a lot of states do that. A lot of states do
You wouldn't have to have a permit to conceal carry.
As long
You
as you're
shouldn't
not
have
a
a permanent
felon,
carry.
as long as you're of age and not a felon.
And think about it, that's like.
This
the-
isn't a
the
good
idea
time
of
to buy.
gun
It's
isn't
not a
great.
buyer's market. It's a seller's market.
Hey, we're thinking about it.
I think of it as a protection.
It's
Because
a
you have to
very-
be served.
As long as it takes to buy a candy bar
People that don't
sometimes.
need it.
It depends on who you're buying it from. If you're going to a box store, yeah, if you're going through a box store like that, they have to run a background check. They run background checks and stuff like that through the FBI database system.
I mean,
And so it could
any
take,
gun
like-
seller has to run a background check.
Now let's.
But unless you're buying from like a regular individual,
Oh, yeah.
like if you're buying from a family member or a neighbor, somebody you trust, who doesn't have stolen one to set you up, you just changed cash and got it,
I
right?
mean, there
That's not
are,
regulated.
there are private selling apps and like.
Yeah, you can go like
Craigslist,
gun broker and all that
specifically
stuff.
for
I don't wanna
that.
buy a gun.
You
Huh?
can, it's
I don't
like,
want a
it
gun.
depends. But I'm gonna tell you, it
You
depends
don't?
on what you're
I
buying,
do not, and I want to.
because this, like I said, like everything costs a lot of money right now in that market. So I'm not saying it's gonna get better. Maybe prices will just keep going up. I don't know. Well, in any case, so they meet on odd number of years, like 2021 on the second Tuesday in January is when the session begins, and they 140 days. So guess what? We're still within that margin. Special sessions, governor sets topics. So the governor gets to at least pick the topics. And so it's like, hey, every 2 years we have to renew the budget for education for public schools. So you gotta talk about that. And they'll be like, hey, we just had like a big shutdown for the COVID stuff, and we got money from the Fed. So let's figure out how we're gonna spend that. So figure that out, you know. So costs to keep them in session. Now this is a 10-year-old slide. So 10 years ago, it was at $1.7 million for that. That's of course to pay for fees to keep the lights on, for people to be there and stuff like that, representatives who don't make a lot of money. It's not a well-paying position. So redistricting after the census. So whenever we have a census, they are supposed to redistrict. It's much like the Fed. Whenever we have a nationwide census, that's when we do redistrict lines for Congress. In fact, it's my understanding, like just after the most recent redistricting in New York, they actually lost a representative because they were like 85 people short in one district. So that it can actually change the number of people who are holding office. So if legislature fails, the legislating redistricting board takes over. And sometimes this goes up to the courts because sometimes people will sue. They'll be like, hey, you redistrict my zone so that it flipped from being this party to another party. That's not fair. I'm going to take it to court because I believe this is done illegally. And sometimes it's up to a judge whether it goes to one side or another.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, since eminent domain is a thing, does that rest on the Texas government, the county, or is it around the city? Or just the country in general?
Well, I mean, you can have federal eminent domain and you can have state eminent domain. And yeah, I'm not sure about county, but I do know municipalities do it, right? Like my parents almost just got eminent domain because they were going to take their property to build kind of like a highway ramp, right? And they're like, what? No way. So
Wait, are you
wait,
saying,
that was the county.
Are
Yeah,
you saying-
yeah. So they were almost eminent domain by their county. Eminent.
Because eminent.
Is it eminent?
Yeah, but
It's eminent because they're taking it immediately instead of having to go
It's
through
not
a
imminent.
5-year-long process.
it's not imminent.
All of these years.
It's
You're-
eminent
We have
domain.
burned my degree.
It's imminent.
Look it up.
I will look it up. I will look it up. I'm not saying you're lying.
No, I'm talking to Michael and I don't know.
Wait,
I don't know what
are
you
you
decided
talking
to
about
say.
you're imminent?
Huh?
It's not the word eminent.
Imminent.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
it's
it is
spelled
I like
I-N-N-E-T.
it, huh?
It is spelled in
Yeah.
Yeah. It's E-M-I-N-E-T.
I blame the
Mark and I are really
British.
smart dudes.
It is me. Yeah, that's terrible. Wait, see, how you know something to change, so I will have been right. All right. Should redistricting occur frequently, more frequently than every 10 years? So you see there are pros and cons to this. Just know that the thing is, in Texas, we only do it after a 10-year census. And so the thing is though, is that sometimes the population can change very quickly. So some people are like, we need to do this more often. Problem is it's not very not very cost effective. And sometimes people move to an area because they want a certain type of representation. And so when you redistrict and change it, it kind of changes the reason they went there in the first place. So here we see though that Texas has always, generally always, for the most part, favored one party over another. So you can see back in 1977, we had very high representation of the Democratic Party, the Southern Democrat Party. And so it was very popular in this time too, because you had a lot of people who were really trying to hold on to like Jim Crow laws. They voted for the Democrat Party because that's what their pappy and their grandpappy voted for. So they were trying to keep schools from integrating and stuff like that. But we see eventually it flips over to Republican.
That's weird.
Well, I think one of the reasons is like the core of a Texan is actually they think of themselves as a conservative-minded voter. But the idea of what a conservative-minded Southern voter wanted in the South back then is different from what a conservative-minded voter wanted now. So you could say the Southern Democratic Party was extremely back then agricultural based. They were also very heavily mixed with racial politics, right? And so that was a big thing here back in the 60s and the 70s.
Technically, they still are.
I
So,
think the entirety of
well,
America
I'm not going to
happens
I'm not going to cast stones right now, but
What?
so you could say that that's where the voting bloc was into. But you see that people remained conservative, but the idea of what a conservative value was changed. And so it's always been looking back to what people thought was the founding principles of their area or America. But here you see Texans think less of themselves as Texans and more of themselves as Americans. And so I think that has part of it.
I've met like tons of Texans say, I'm Texan.
Well, we still have that. We still have that sentiment. But I think that over time, I think especially in the 2000s, most Texans think of themselves as an American more than a Texan. I really do. Yeah.
I do.
On my mom's last medical statement, they asked her like, what country? She
Yeah.
put Texas.
Unfortunately, the Texas government said we're not a Texas government anymore. So that's
The thing about Texas is that a surprisingly majority still would feel okay with seceding from just America.
I think people flirt with the idea. It comes out, right?
It's because due to war, we have to give away that right. Even if we were a country previously and Texas really didn't.
Yeah, we had to take an oath to be part of the United States, never secede again. And yeah, when we agreed to it.
That's always the argument against Texas seceding.
Those
The thing
Texans
is,
are all
we
good.
we were in the case.
Yeah. But then you could come up to the point, but then you, like, that's the thing about legalese, then you could always say, but the oath that they took, that contract's been broken, and if you break the contract, neither side has to listen to it. I don't know.
And don't forget, we actually had two Civil War battles. One was during the actual war, one was like, I think, like 3 years later.
It
Palo
was
Alto,
years.
because we didn't realize the war was over.
Yeah, the Battle of Palmetto, it was 3 years, I think it was like 3 months or something.
3 months?
Yeah.
That was a little more.
I don't think it was years. Hey, what's up?
Okay, for Texas to succeed, we would have to show ourselves as being self-sufficient.
Yeah, and
Separate from the US.
We actually are. We actually give more money to the federal government than they give to us, because every single dollar we send to the federal government, we get 33 cents back.
it would be a very expensive shift because we do have a lot of federal reliance regardless, as far as like their functions and stuff. So it would be a okay, Texas, wherever you want. It would be a very expensive process because then we'd all of a sudden have to start thinking about defense and like now we can't use federal funding and things for the highways and the interstates. Now we got to do our own. All of a sudden, like, oh gosh, we're not in Social Security anymore. almost everybody was hoping for. What are we gonna do? You know, you have to figure that out. And it's like there's people's taste, things and expectations you have. Like there's a lot of people on Medicare, Medicaid, and all this other stuff, and SNAP. What are we gonna do with them? Like, are we just gonna pull the plug and hope they're okay with it? I mean, so there's farm subsidies. Farmers are some of the biggest takers of subsidies in the United States. So you need to figure out about them and make sure the farmers revolt burning down the capital. So I read a lot of stuff. A lot of growing pains. All right, so let's see here. Until the 1970s, Texas was a one-party Democratic state. It's been that way ever since Andrew Jackson. Well, no. Well, not Andrew Jackson. Ever since the state became a state, it was a Democrat state until the late 70s, really. And I think what's going to change it for the most part is a lot of Texans are going to see that they're very different from like Northern Democrats, because a lot of the old Jim Crow things have been crushed and they're going away. So trying to hold on to that was kind of like a failing mission anyways. And so they didn't see themselves in common with the war protesters and things like that were moving to the Democrat Party. The presidents that were coming up, even though you had LBJ, who was himself a Democrat, it seems like a lot of the Texans moved away from that. I think a lot of people had changed heart. There's always been kind of like speculation on what the flip was. Some people will say that Nixon kind of flipped it around, that a lot of people were so into Nixon that they're like, oh, I guess that's my party now. But it's a lot of it's speculative, because one party will say it's because we were so noble, and the other party will say, what could they trick them? I don't know. It's hard to figure out. Republicans now majority in both House, Senate, partisanship in House increasing. That, you can say that for the whole United States. This was 10 years ago. It's much more now. But both parties don't really talk to one another like they used to.
Texas was.
Unless you want to call them the unit party.
Texas was Republican, like serious majority Republican, even though it's shrinking because a lot of like people from California and New York moving to Texas have better economic opportunities. They keep their values with them.
Well, demographics make policy and politics, but let's see. We'll see, because somebody could counter that and say, well, the people who migrate are wanting that kind of lifestyle. And they might not vote like that. I don't know. I'm just throwing a counter argument. I'm not saying I believe that either way. All right, constitutionally set salary of $7,200 per year. So if you want to get rich quick, go serve in the Texas Congress. So like I told you, that's not enough money to keep an office, to hire an aide per year. Yeah, so the intent behind this was so that somebody wouldn't seek office to get rich. But anybody who knows how this actually works, you don't get rich in politics from your salary. You get rich from making laws that help secret investments you have, or things like that, kickbacks. Like like that's not how that works. So nice try, guys. But Unchained in 1975, they get $157 per diem. What that means is that if you are a representative and you're going to Austin, they'll give you $157 to get a hotel room during session and stuff like that. So they'll give you some money per day to get a hotel and to get some food, and but you're not staying at like a really nice hotel.
Yeah, $157 if you're in like a big city or something, like that's not gonna get you the nicest hotel and fancy.
They probably give you a little bit more.
Get some takeout.
Yeah, I mean, but for like a major government official,
Yeah, you're not eating lobster, right? If you are, it's out of a can. So.
Person.
yeah.
It's like there should be no like monetary incentive to be a politician.
Well, it's true. But the criticism is the only people who can get into it are already rich. Like, if we're gonna get into it, you're already rich. Which is why I say
Law
it's
school or whatever.
Now,
political science
here's what I think. I think that it should be enough, especially because you have to be so educated in a position like that. it should be enough to, make it a worthwhile endeavor, but not enough to make you rich.
Well, yeah.
But enough
Okay.
to where you don't already need to be rich,
Okay, yes, sir.
Yeah, but caveat to that is that politics is made where you're not supposed to be a school requirement to get in.
Mhm.
It's supposed to be like your dedication and your willingness to get it done.
Yeah. I mean, you're a servant. You're a servant mindset. You're representing your area, the interest of your people, your voters, and all that. So yeah, I mean, it's perfect world, right? Only in. So, all right. But yeah, y'all all make good points. All right. So, membership qualifications, formal qualifications. So, Article 3 of the Texas Constitution. To be in the Senate, you have to be 26 years old or older, qualified for 5 years. So it means you have to be a resident here. You're resident of your district for 1 year at least. So you're supposed to at least be familiar with the people you represent. In the House, you only got to be 21. Once again, qualified voter, resident of the state for 2 years, and of your district 1 year. That means you moved to Texas at least 2 years ago, and you've been in Tyler for at least a year. Yeah, so just hit 21. You got to have that 21-year-old mark. So, experience and turnover. So there's a high turnover rate, right? Traditionally high at 20 to 25%. So people will serve. 1 out of 4 people only serve one time. They're like, forget this, I'm out of here. So senatorial, not as important as Texas, as Congress. And it's true because everything has to pass through the House. And it's the House that makes the most noise in Texas politics. But the Senate still has the final say. And the Senate also has what we see here, committee chairmanship. So things like on business, trade, like health, things like that. So presiding officers, you have the Senate is presided over by the lieutenant governor. And so remember, that's kind of like our second in command for the state. And in many ways, the lieutenant governor has more power than the governor does because he has a lot more power over what laws actually make it through the House and the Senate. Elected statewide in partisan election, 4-year term, major political force, appoints committee chairs, manages flow of legislation. And it's not longer that. I think it's, is it Patrick or is it the other guy? I got his face in my head because he's got like a walleye. What's his name? He does. It's like, and he got in trouble for a while because they were saying he was taking money or something like that. I don't know if they got that cleared up. So I might have him mixed up with the Attorney General. All right, presiding officers for the House. You have the Speaker of the House, much like the United States government, elected by the actual members of the House, not by the people. But I guess indirectly you could say they are. Chooses committee chairs and members, just like the other one. Currently, no longer that. I don't know who current speaker is. So, gosh, who was it? Oh well. So honorary positions. So you have like pro tempore. That's Latin for like in the meantime. It's like for the time being. So. So you can have like a Senate membership, elects president. So like if the lieutenant governor is out or the speaker's out, they can vote for somebody to substitute, essentially what that means. Legislative committees, standing committees that are kind of like the big overarching ones, subcommittees, which are for more specific topics. Congress committees, ad hoc committees, interim, just note there are committees at the wazoo. And these committees are usually, they meet to figure out what laws need to be done. But I'm going to tell you a secret. Most of the laws that make it through Austin were written before that 2-year period. So you'll have groups of people make up these laws to propose in that 140-day window and try to pass it through as fast as possible because they don't have all year to do it. They can't do it every year. They have that small window, so they try to make these laws and pass them through quickly before people change their mind. So, standing committees, we're going to do this in a couple more minutes. Permanent jurisdiction over an area of public policy, such as like an education committee, so on, right? And so here you see 36 members in the House and 18 of the Senate. appointments made by a modified system in both the houses. We're not worried about the details of that. Just know that there are some people who specialize in certain things. Like I had the honor to get to go participate in one of the house ones a couple of times for education. It didn't turn out like I thought it would, but it was something I got to see how it worked a little bit, right? Other committees, subcommittees, established committee chairpersons. So like, hey, we found a problem in education that has to do with bullying. So we'll make a let's investigate campus bullying subcommittee for education. Ad hoc conference. So these are just things that the executive really needs work on. Interim. So this is where you can have an advisory board if the experts help out, and select committees. So I'm not sure what the select committees are. But hey folks, we're going to end there. I'm going to give you the rest of class time, which is about 30 minutes to work on your bonus paper. If you haven't finished it, the sooner you get that in, the better. If you will have something that's late, you need to go ahead and turn it in. So, all right, see you later.